Welcome to another live. All right, so just waiting for persons to come on in. But for this one, we're going to have a conversation about, dual citizenship. Who is right? The opposition leader, Mr. Mark Golding, or the Prime Minister, Andrew Holness? All right, so welcome. Just waiting for some persons to come on in to talk about, this. So this is a quick live, so meet me by the river. All right, I am right here and just waiting for you guys to come on in. So it's the opposition leader and the prime minister in the context of dual citizenship. And again, we want to talk about who is right, given, all that has been happening. And yeah, so come on in and let us have a conversation about that for sure. So as we know by now, or should know by now, and if you don't, let me just try and give you a quick recap of, this context. So, the Constitutional Reform Committee was in place, and I guess to kind of begin the process of moving away from the monarchy, from the king, under the rule of King Charles, right? And so that, I guess, was going on in terms of, having meetings, and the opposition was a part of that. I believe they had 3 members on the committee, and I guess other members from civil society and governing members. So this was pretty much led by the minister, Marlene Malahu Fort. And so it came to the point now where they were, I guess, somewhat ready to submit the report. And at this point, the opposition, they were no longer interested in signing off on the report for a number of reasons, right? And so in that context, the opposition, so Mark Golding, he called a press conference and he pretty much shared, which he made, some valid points. He pretty much shared that if it is that we want to move away from, the monarchy, and he used the word decolonization, if it is that we are going to decolonize, so if we're true about decolonization, we cannot have, one foot in and one foot out of the king's yard. And so for me, that was a very strong and valid point, and it made a lot of sense to me in the context of decolonization. In that conversation, in that conference that he had, he was specifically referring to, the moving away from the Privy Council to the CCJ, right? And so he was saying, the government, they need to pretty much share, or the prime minister needs to disclose his stance as it relates to the CCJ, moving toward the CCJ. All right. And, I guess that's a fair ask of the opposition leader. And so I believe in that same conference too, he raised the notion of dual citizenship in terms of allowing persons who have dual citizenship to, I guess, participate in, parliament, in the Jamaican parliament. So as a result of that conversation, it started to trigger, or, some other issues regarding Mr. Golding. And so persons were now asking Mr. Golding to state if he's a British citizen, and, he pretty much was sharing that his father was was a British citizen. He came to Jamaica. He, Mark Golding, was born in Jamaica, you know, pretty much spent all of his life in Jamaica, only worked in Jamaica. And, you know, I guess he said he had a British passport or, you know, something to that effect. I'm going to try my best to see, you know, how I can share some of these recordings with you as best as I can. All right. And so, as a result of that, there was some pressure, you know, mounting, and there were calls for him to disclose, you know, if he is indeed a citizen of the UK. Mats Morgan, welcome. Thanks for liking. So, guys, yes, it is important that you hit the like button, the share button, and the subscription button. So, as you pop in, hit the like button, guys, and, you know, enjoy the view. Enjoy the view for sure. So again, you know, in that context, as I was sharing, you know, the calls came in terms of, you know, for him to disclose. So on Sunday, last Sunday, by virtue of the Jamaica Gleaner, we found out that Mr. Golding was also a UK citizen. All right, so that triggered a lot of, I guess, conversation. All right, and in terms of Mr. Golding, and, you know, given that he was talking about, you know, not having one foot in a King Charles yard, and that is something that, you know, I would definitely like to follow up with Mr. Golding on, you know, just to get a sense of, given that you're now a UK citizen, how does that work? You know, in terms of us, you know, leaving out a King Charles yard, since you're, you know, a very good candidate in terms of becoming the next Prime Minister of Jamaica. All right, so with that, apparently now, not apparently, but Mr. Andrew Holness, he went on CVM at Sunrise, and so he did an interview there, and I guess he was talking about, you know, Mr. Golding's issue, you know, in the sense that it was pretty much not a good look for Jamaica, and pretty much that he had no chance of, you know, bouncing back from, I guess, something like that. And I guess that is something for the Jamaican people to decide when they go to the polls. But I want to touch on the fact that he too made reference to dual citizenship, and in terms of getting, I guess, persons from the diaspora to be a part of, you know, parliament, to participate in I guess the governing of the country. So now, and, you know, Mark Golding, he was pretty much sharing that, you know, they weren't really for that. And if it's a case then where, and this was following an interview on TVJ with Mr. Golding now, and I'm going to see how best I can share some audio with you guys. So Mr. Golding is pretty much saying, you know, you're, as a prime minister, you're just saying that because the opposition is saying this at this point. And Mr. Golding raised a valid question to say, if it is that the prime minister, you know, is saying or wanting, you know, dual citizens to participate in parliament, then why would he have a problem with him being a citizen of the UK? And that's a very good question. That's a very good question, right? And so when I am analyzing situation, I tend to look at it and in a critical sense. I don't tend to look at it, I don't look at it because of color. You know, I am a Jamaican and I want to look at it from that perspective. And look at what's happening on the river, guys. Fantastic. I want to look at it, you know, from the perspective of a Jamaican citizen. Mark you, you know, we are all people, we are human, you know, so as a human being, you have your own subjectivity. So that is going to be there. So to be fair, you put that out, because you will hear something and you decide based on your value system. All right, for example, you will make a decision based on your value system, and so that is important too in terms of how we are viewing this context. So at this juncture, both leaders, they're talking about dual citizenship. And I can definitely understand the point that Mark Golding is making. If it is that the Prime Minister is saying that, he's opening up now to dual citizens participating in Parliament, why is this Prime Minister having a problem with, me, as in Mark Golding, being a citizen of the UK as well? What I get from the Prime Minister is that certain positions in the Parliament, and I guess, for example, the opposition leader and the Prime Minister, they should not be dual citizens. All right? And I don't know how you guys are viewing this, but as I shared with you, previously, I shared that I am not for this whole dual citizenship thing in terms of, persons in the Jamaican Parliament. And I feel that that is something that, we have kind of come to know in the context of Commonwealth citizens, as a result of colonialism. All right, so that is definitely a point there that I want to highlight. While we were talking, perhaps 2 evenings ago, I said that, perhaps members in the diaspora could get the opportunity to vote, and that is where, the conversation should start from. But while I was reflecting, as I shared perhaps yesterday, I said to myself, that is not even fair. And when you think about it, you'll have persons voting that do not live in Jamaica, voting on issues and outcomes that can affect the people in Jamaica who are living there. So you're living abroad, you're not living in Jamaica, but then you get to influence how the people in Jamaica are living. And I feel like that's taking away the voice of those persons or citizens who are living in the country, or that can possibly take away the voice of persons in the country based on what they want. So I would say, this whole notion of dual citizenship on either side is not something that we should come to accept as Jamaicans, and to each his own. So if you're okay with it, I respect your view and would love to hear from you, why you're okay with it. And I'll share, why I am not okay with it. And I think I started to share one, the big notion is that this is a colonial legacy, right? And if you have been following us, as we talk about this situation, the big focus for us here is regarding the context of decolonization. And that is why I was very, very much appreciative of Mr. Golding's comment initially at the press conference when he said, we can't have 1 foot in and 1 foot out of King Charles Yard. Because I appreciate that. If it is that we're very sincere about decolonization, then we have to look at it in its totality. And again, if we're going to look at it in its totality and to address it in terms of moving away, ridding ourselves of colonialism and its legacy, it is a process. It's going to take time. It's going to take time. We cannot do it in just one little bit, in a year or so. It's going to take time. It's an ongoing process of learning, of unlearning, relearning, and learning, right? And so in that context, I appreciated, as I shared, his comments, or, his statements regarding, not having one foot in and one foot out of King Charles Yard. But the unfortunate part to that, from my perspective, is that we are now in a situation where he's a citizen of the UK. Again, he is not doing anything that is illegal. So I just want to make that clear. Our constitution, as it now stands, support Commonwealth citizens in our parliament. So I want to just emphasize that again, because that is also important in this conversation. But my issue with dual citizenship, and I'm talking dual citizenship whether Commonwealth or non-Commonwealth, for example, like the USA, we should not be considering that. So now that we have the Constitution, which is really, a legacy of colonialism, when you're going to have, where we have Commonwealth citizens that can participate in our parliament, at, I guess, up to the highest level, that for me is something that we need to decolonize. We need to get rid of it. So if it is that we are true about, decolonization as purported by Mr. Golding, then Mr. Holness or, nor Mr. Golding, we don't want to facilitate that conversation about dual citizenship. And I suspect that Mr. Golding is ready to renounce his UK citizenship. And I get that too from what he has shared. And I believe at this juncture, it is important for both leaders to come together to try and fix things. Not as how it is, right, at this given time because of the political climate in terms of elections. So I would say put that on pause for a bit, right? And so in that sense, right, I am saying we need our leaders to have a serious conversation, and even parliamentarians on both sides, about this whole notion of dual citizenship. Because if it is, we are really serious about constitutional reform, if it is that we're really serious about decolonization in terms of getting rid of all forms and shapes of colonialism in whatever, in whatever way that they are presented, then it means that this part about, Commonwealth citizens sitting in our parliament, we need to get rid of that too. And not just that part. We have other aspects of our laws, reflecting these, aspects of colonialism. Even in the courts, that you go in there and you have judges in wigs and all that jazz. Colonialism, right? Colonialism. In our schools, in our education system. So colonialism is not just about politics, right? It's also about, the curriculum. What students are learning, what your children are learning. So if it is then that we are not going to put in the work that, is truly required for us to decolonize, then it's just a little symbolic, process or gesture. Andrea, welcome. Andrea, I see your comment there, and I'm not sure at what point you joined us, but we're not disputing that Mr. Golding, was born in Jamaica. I have no other information regarding that, and I am not in a position to breach any data laws or whatever that might be, but I cannot speak to that. But what we have been sharing here, Andrea, is that, Mr. Golding, legally there isn't anything wrong, and I'm not even talking about that because we have talked about that in previous conversation. What that looks like and how that feel, as a Jamaican citizen. So right now we're pretty much, just talking about the whole notion of dual citizenship from both sides, and the fact that, Mr. Golding kind of shared that initially, and that triggered, persons to be asking, if he's a British citizen as well. And then we heard the Prime Minister going on, CVM at Sunrise talking about dual citizenship. So what we're sharing here, so we're not really, bashing anyone. So let me just make that clear, is that both leaders, as well as the parliamentarians, they need to come together and decide if they're serious about decolonization. Because decolonization would mean that section of the Constitution that is supporting dual citizenship from Commonwealth countries will be moved, eliminated. And as I shared earlier, I suspect, based on what I hear from Mr. Golding in his interview on TVJ, that I think he's going or is willing to renounce his UK citizenship. So, it would be fantastic to have, our leaders coming together. But at this point, we understand that we're in kind of what I would describe as the silly season in terms of, general election, constitutionally due, I think, by September 2025. So that will not, by virtue of that, a good conversation regarding constitutional reform may not be facilitated at this point. But it is the hope that, at some point, as Jamaicans or as persons, who really want to see, Jamaica move forward, we can have or our leaders can have a conversation regarding this notion of dual citizenship, because I feel that, dual citizenship should not be something that is facilitated in Jamaica. And again, I say that to say the mere fact that whatever is in the Constitution now, one, that's a part of colonialism. That's a legacy, a colonial legacy. And the next point is that we want, persons that are in our parliament where, Jamaican laws will always apply to them. In that sense, we don't want persons to be, able to go somewhere else and we have to go through their legal system if it is that, we want to get them here to respond to something legally, for example, in that sense. And so I feel that this is something that should be put to the Jamaican people in terms of, having some good conversations around, in terms of them understanding what is decolonization, what it is all about, this process, and what, we would want for our country. So it's not just for me personally, it's not just from a political standpoint. So I don't come here to say, but what I'm saying to our leaders is that we need to look at the bigger picture. DJ Jamrock, welcome. Yeah, so and that is what I am saying, because from both sides right now, and I really don't like to get into the politics of things, but let us just go back a little bit in the past. So for some of you, perhaps you might remember when I believe Bruce Golding, when he came into power and the JLP won, I believe the seat count in terms of distribution in Parliament was about 32-28, somewhere there. So during that time, about, they had, some dual citizens in parliament, and by some way, the opposition party at the time, the PNP, I guess they got information and they acted on that information. And so what happened, I can recall, Darrell Vaz and I think Abe Dabdoo, they went to court in term. I'm not sure if everyone went to court, but the court, I think that was the first one. But the court essentially decided, guys, look again at this view on the river. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. I hope you're enjoying it. Fantastic. I would not do that though. But that's looking wonderful. All right. So, that happened. It went to court. So I suspect at the time, the PNP, they were trying to gain the majority in the parliament by virtue of the court, dismissing the dual citizen and giving them the seat. But in essence, from what I can recall and remember, the court pretty much ruled, I guess, the election null and void, and there were by-elections. So in Darrell Vaz's case, I believe Shahini Robinson, perhaps Warmington was in it, and there perhaps was an MP from Northern Clarendon, maybe Michael Stern. I think that's the name I'm remembering. Don't quote me on this one, guys, but just from recollection, right? And so that happened, and that was the stance of the PNP. That was the stance of the PNP to say they don't want any dual citizens. So at that time, obviously, citizens of, US in the parliament. And so those member of parliament, those MPs, yes, they had to renounce their citizenship. All right. So again, fast forward here now, and I suspect, because Mark Golding, when he shared at the conference, he was clear, I guess, in stating that it was his personal view. So maybe that hit some of the, the PNP supporters or members of the PNP. Maybe that hit them in a rather surprising way, the stance that Mark Golding took at that media, press conference. And so that's something new in terms of learning now about the PNP. Again, Mark Golding emphasized that was his personal position. All right, so that's what happened in the past there. Fast forward back to here, 2024. Mark Golding brought up back this thing about dual citizenship, and then the Prime Minister went on CVM at Sunrise to say that I guess he would support that too. But I'm saying, as Jamaicans, we should decide on that, because it means that as a dual citizen, you pledge allegiance, to some other foreign country, or you take some other oath, And so we need to decide what it is that we want as a country. Is this something that we would want, where we have, our members of parliament, our legislators, persons who are in parliament making laws that could possibly do not apply to them? The same persons that are sitting in parliament and drafting, legislation, making laws, they can just get up whenever they feel like and leave Jamaica. That to me is not a good look. On either side, it does not sit well with me. It does not sit well with me. And Andrea is saying it doesn't look good or sound good on the two parties, right? And that's what I'm saying. So in essence, we need to have a good conversation about what we want for Jamaica. And DJ is saying my short answer is no. And that is what I am saying. So we're not here to, flip flop, as they would say, play politics. We're here to, this is Voices in Education. Usually we do call in, guys, but as you see, I am on the road, so I just want to check in and share because persons have been reaching out. And I see some comments, and I guess some persons don't really understand our platform, and so they come with their political agenda and think that we're here. No, I am here to support Jamaica and Jamaicans, and to give a voice to Jamaicans who want to share their perspective. Even if I don't agree with what you're sharing, that's okay, as long as we're doing it in a respectful way and we're not bashing anyone. So guys, I see you here. We can do better with the thumbs up. So just close that X and hit the thumbs up button. Alright, just close that X and hit the thumbs up button. Alright, and let's, bring this number up. So in essence, what I am saying is that when you're going to ask about dual citizenship and who is right, no. Mark Golden isn't, and Andrew Holness isn't. This is something that we need to take seriously. And it doesn't matter where. So if we are sincere about decolonization and what it is that we want for Jamaica, then, we need to look at our constitution, and not just our constitution, but every aspect of our Jamaican society that is intertwined or weaved in with, into our that we have colonialism weaved into, right? Because colonialism, it's like years, even to this point, the way we think, our mindset. When we think of our knowledge system, it's very much, Western based, right? And so we have to start somewhere, and I would love to meet my leaders, because you see, I am a Jamaican first, and that is why I say here we maintain the respect, right? We don't bash people, because if Mr. Golding becomes the next prime minister, he's my prime minister. He's the prime minister of Jamaica, and I'm a Jamaican. So I want the best for my country. I want the best for my country, and I suspect that every Jamaican would want the same thing, right? So this whole notion of dual citizenship, we need to leave it, but in a true democratic sense, because that is what, our country should be based on in terms of principle. Then, let the people decide. If Jamaica wants their MPs to have dual citizenship in parliament, then that's a Jamaica decision. But, personally, I say no. We cannot have MPs in parliament because they are legislator, right? And then you have the executive branch, which is the cabinet, so the ministers. We can't have our ministers, right? And our the legislator or the MPs who are in there making laws and passing laws. And then you can leave Jamaica land we love, and then these same laws that you create that could be antagonizing other people will never impact you or affect you. Guys, we need to think seriously about that part. It cannot be that we are going to say yes to persons, and it doesn't matter once, because the thing is, perhaps they're going to be Jamaicans, right? But it could be a situation where they're born Jamaicans, right? But then, for example, they move to the US and they're now a US citizen. But by virtue of being able to go somewhere else and live where the laws that you make are not applicable to you, I don't believe in that. But I want to put that to you, to ask you. Some persons have been sharing in the chat. What do you think about that? Should, our members of parliament, so dual citizen, if we should allow that? And it's somewhat there because the common, if you're a citizen of the Commonwealth, then you can sit in the parliament, because that's the situation with Mr. Golding right now. So the question, and if they're not sharing it like how I am sharing it, I am sharing it in this way. Is it okay for our members of parliament, for example, they make laws? Should they be making laws that could possibly not applied to them because they can go somewhere and live? And it's similar in the sense where I was sharing about, people in the diaspora voting. I definitely understand the contribution of the diaspora to the Jamaican economy, for example, and in other aspects, social, cultural. But if we want them to participate, I don't know how we're going to do that. Because as I shared, I came up with the argument that perhaps we should start thinking about, allowing them to vote. And then I said to myself after reflecting, but they may be living somewhere else in a foreign land, and they're voting and influencing what is going to happen to people who actually live in Jamaica. When, they are not in the country, they are not living in the country. So whatever decision that they are making in Jamaica is not going to affect them because they're not in Jamaica. So we need to seriously think about what it is that we want. We're at a very critical stage now, and your voice definitely matters. Election is coming up. You can exercise. Let them hear your voice loud and clear there. And so this is definitely important. We need to hold our leaders accountable. To me, it's just ridiculous to have parliamentarians, as I said, making laws, and then the possibility exists where they can leave Jamaica whenever they wish, and then, these laws do not apply to them. All right, let me just quickly look here. DJ Jamrock, I see your comment there. If Jamaica aims to be truly independent, its constitution should be revised to reflect Jamaican values, not Commonwealth values. All references to the Commonwealth should be removed. And definitely that's the point. And that's the point I am making when we're thinking about decolonization. So if it is that we're not sincere about, decolonization, then I don't know. It's not no 1 foot in and 1 foot out. I agree with that statement, but it's like mouth talk, but then, we're not seeing the action. And action speaks louder than words. So we want to see, the action supporting, the words. Sometimes you have something there in theory and it is not practiced. But, right now, again, we need to think, very, very seriously about decolonization. And this whole notion of dual citizenship is a colonial legacy and something that we should not entertain. Yeah, that's just my perspective on it. It's a colonial legacy and something that we should not entertain. And it's a colonial legacy by virtue of Commonwealth citizens, from countries, so whether it be India, Australia, Canada, who can come and just stay in Jamaica for a little bit, whatever the time is. I don't know if it's a year, and they can go all the way. And again, remember, they may not necessarily be born in Jamaica. So you could have somebody born in Australia and decide that they're going to come and run in our election and become a parliamentarian, and it's okay. And then after a while they decide, you know what, we didn't make the lie about XXX, and then just gone because they can't bother with Jamaica anymore. No, no, no. When it comes on to certain things in our country, we need some loyalty. Loyalty should not be something that we're questioning, you know. And the prime minister and opposition leader, they need to go back and fix that. The opposition leader said it was his personal view, so I don't know if that is the view of the PNP in general. And the prime minister, I don't know if that's the view of the JLP in general, but he did not emphasize, like the opposition leader, that it was his personal view. So again, that is something that we should think about in this context. So guys, I'm going to wrap this one up, and thank you so much for coming over. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. So for the persons who pass through here, continue to leave your comments, share with someone who might want to hear this kind of perspective, and tell a friend to tell another friend about the Voices in Education. This is a safe space where we share and learn from each other. We do that in a respectful way to ensure that we are maintaining this safe space, where you feel a sense of belonging, where you feel valued, and you just feel comfortable coming here, just to listen and hear varying perspectives, because I don't always have the answer, and I learn from persons here, and so there is so much richness in diversity. So thank you so much. And I know I didn't get to share the recording, so I'll perhaps try to come by the river another time and just talk with you guys and share as best as I can. All right, so thank you so much for making it Voices in Education. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and turn on your post notifications. So tap that bell and select all, so that you do not miss any updates from this channel. Let me just check in the chat to see if I'm missing any comments. Sometimes I am not always the best at this one, but again, really appreciate your support. All right, blessings and love, everyone, and see you in the next live. All right, bye for now.